Good morning and welcome to this week's Jump Recruitment discussion. This week, we're talking about a subject I think is going to be close to every client's heart, especially as we come out of 2024 into 2025. It's will your clients help you build and grow in 2025? And let's test our client relationship on that. We already know that selling to your existing client base will probably create around about 72% of your business revenue each year. According to HubSpot and according to the Harvard Business Review, you've got a 60 to 70% chance of getting more business out of your existing clients, where you have a 10 to 25% chance of getting new business out of, well, getting business out of new clients. Cross-selling is a really interesting conversation. I sort of looked very heavily into this and sort of used HubSpot as a guide from this. Cross-selling is participated by 87% of the sales marketplace. So that's just not the recruitment market, the sales marketplace. And it generates round about 21% of sales revenue. So again, are we doing enough cross-selling? Because I think we get very stuck in our little areas in recruitment and never sort of step out of that. And according to one survey, in B2B sales, the length of time it takes to close a new business deal is between 4 to 6 months. So again, that's a real thought process of when we're bringing new people into the business, or we've got existing billers in the business trying to open new business. It takes on average 4 to 6 months to do a deal, where in contrast, selling to your existing customer base is up to 14 times easier and can happen in a matter of minutes rather than a matter of months. And under the right circumstances, it can happen straight away. And just for the record, acquiring a new customer costs 5 times more than retaining an existing one. But we do an awful lot of process looking at getting into new clients and developing new clients, which needs to continue. Let me just put that out there. It needs to continue. So it's important that we do everything we can to maximize or minimize the churn and maximize our opportunity within our client base. Today, it's just me and Dave. Paul is out and about, Heather's out and about, and we have a new released next week, tomorrow, coming out about a new person joining Jump. So look out for that. I'll be sending an email out and posts on LinkedIn, etc. from there. But if you've got a sneak preview, have a quick shift around our website, see if you can find something on our website that might give that away. But it's worth having a look. So Dave, I hope you're well. Let's kick off. Okay, so an interesting topic, and a topic that I think a lot of people that have tuned in will be really interested in. I also think it's going to be one of those webinars that lots of people are going to watch afterwards. So the question is this: what are the biggest mistakes recruitment leaders make when assessing client relationships, and how can they correct them?
I think for me, good morning everyone. I think for me, one of the big issues is that people talk about clients as organizations and not people. So they will say, for example, we have a really good relationship with Amex. We have a really good relationship with Ford. We have an ongoing relationship with Coca-Cola, whoever it may be. And actually, when you drill it down, the relationship is with whoever is employed within the organization who owns a relationship with whichever people they engage with daily. Now, that's particularly on the big organizations, but it's also true for the very small organizations as well. So I was always encouraged by, I had an American boss that came over and joined me and forbade us using the client name when we were talking about clients. He always said you had to use the individual that you were dealing with at Ford. So it would be John Smith at Ford, Robert Hardy at Ford, Helen Smith at Ford. And it really forced us into examining the relationships we had and who we had those relationships with. So we mapped them out. And it took on a different dimension in terms of our strength of relationship. Because a lot of the time we realized we had really good relationships with certain individuals, but there was lots more going on in other parts of the organization. And that's true, as I said, whether you're dealing with an organization of 500, 5,000 or 50. So I would encourage people to examine all the personal business relationships they have with all the clients they have as they map them out.
So I think that's a really sort of interesting point. That's a point that we've sort of come across a number of times in the past. And I think there's a slightly different view of this. And I think this is sort of from my view as a manager, as a team leader, as an area manager, director, etc., but even more so now as a coach and mentor to people. I think there's a bigger problem than this. I think the problem is complacency. I
Yeah.
think business leaders, recruiters that get into a relationship with a client become very complacent. And they have complacency in two things. They have complacency in the products and services that they're delivering to the client, and therefore they never update those products and services. And we'll talk about those later. But I think they then have a very false view of what that client relationship is actually like. And they have this view that it's a relationship based on loyalty and based on trust, when I think they've barely got a relationship at all. And that relationship is probably very transactional. And I think you've got to start to leverage, as you were saying, if you're not talking about this is Esso or this is so and so, so and so, but you're talking, I've got a relationship with Dave Pye. Well, the question is, then, is how many of the people are you leveraging from that relationship to grow that relationship? And if you look at that sort of conversation about, and that stat about cross-selling, we don't cross-sell enough to get to where we want to be and what we should be doing. So I think the biggest mistake that lots of recruitment leaders make is looking at their buying clients and thinking they've got a great relationship and thinking that relationship is growing. And that goes to about what we've talked about over the last sort of couple of weeks a little bit, that, what's a buying client? What's a client that's working with you? And, I've started to work with, some of the businesses that I'm working with and started to say, right, a buying client on temp is if they've bought in the last 4 weeks, they're a buying client. If they haven't, okay, they're now lapsed. And then now the lapse, that means your relationship is degrading. We've got to do something to resurrect that relationship and get stronger with that relationship. If it's a perm market, depending on the type of perm market it could be anywhere between 8 weeks and 13 weeks. If they've stopped buying, what's happened? Now, there's lots of clients there that will buy once or twice from us in a year, but it's understanding that. But it's still understanding that once they stop buying, they are no longer a client. And therefore, we shouldn't treat it as a client relationship. We should treat it as a new business relationship and how to develop that. And we spend so much time developing those relationships to get into new business. And as you can see, it takes 4 to 6 months to open that. That's the bit I think we go wrong at. And we really need to sort of address that and how we look at that from there. So that leads us to a sort of different question then. And this is a question that I think that we've, again, probably challenged and we've skirted around and had different views on over the last sort of 3 or 4 sort of months of the sessions that we've been doing, is how do you identify a client relationship that's no longer mutually beneficial, and what steps do you take to either rejuvenate it or walk away?
My experience is that agencies are always more scared or worried about letting go of a client than the client ever is of letting go of the agency. And that may go to the strength of relationship. I don't know. But I think what you've got to do is define mutual benefit. Who is it mutually beneficial for in your organization? So for the consultant, they may be earning really good commission and doing really good work, but also then that they may be part of a team leadership where the team leader gets a bonus as well. And when you add that up, actually suddenly it's beginning to look like quite a costly client. And then from the financial team, they may be paying late, so the debtor days may be going up, or it may be difficult to get the cash in. So in that whole transaction from requirement to cash, where is the benefit? Now, if you can hand on heart tick all the way along that this is a really good client, we're making really good money, we're putting good service in, the client is grateful for what we're doing, and you can demonstrate that, then you know you've got a win-win. But I think from as an agency leader, you responsibly, you've got to look at it and go, well, where are we getting benefit from this and how long will it last? And then it comes down to the questions you're discussing with that individual client relationship. How is that for you? How are we getting on? Where could we improve? What are others doing that we're not doing? And having that really open dialogue. And firstly, that dialogue's got to be had with the relationship owner within your own organization. If you're running a small company, you may be the person who has that relationship. And they may be really grateful. They've seen you develop your business, they've seen you grow, and they're happy to support you, and you're happy to support them as they grow their businesses at time. But that isn't always the case. And I think sometimes you've just got to take a stock and stop and go, let's just look at who's getting what out of this and how much we're paying and how much are we costing versus what else could we do with that resource, that time, that cash.
It's a really interesting. So I thought long and hard about this when I sort of looked at sort of writing the question, and I went back into sort of what I used to do with a lot of my teams, was that every quarter I'd want them to project what they thought their client base was going to bill, and then I asked them what gave them that thought process. So is it just a guesstimate? Is it a finger in the air? Is it genuine down to fact? You know exactly what's going on with the process. And what that led me to believe that you didn't understand what that mutually beneficial relationship was, if it was too far or too far away. And so I think I then started to look at it from a different point. I started to think that every client relationship was at its lowest point. And I started to use that as the de facto starting point to then
Yeah,
build out what I
yeah,
would class as the
yeah,
spider's web of a relationship across the business. And once you start to understand that you're then building that relationship across the business, you can start to close that spider's web and pull on the strings and pull on the cords to bring them in. So it's a choice, you know. What do you do? Do you review the data that you've got to establish the client's worth? Do you listen to what your consultants are saying to say this is what the clients told us they're going to do, etc.? Do you look, as you said, look at the the number of days it takes to make a sale, the time it takes them to pay, etc. And then you can sort of investigate the worth of the client and whether it's worth walking away. And that's the choice between a vanity client and a sanity client. And I often looked at this, and I remember having this conversation with lots of my consultants, and I've had it lots of with clients. How many agencies are working with big players in the market who are providing a great service but a low margin, poor terms, you're never in charge. They're always in charge. You're not making any profit, but you dance to a client's tune whenever they ask, when actually we should be either addressing the client and, if appropriate, we should be leaving the client. But we don't because of vanity rather than sanity. And I think sometimes you've got to look at that. So I think data and your famous comment of let the data decide, I think in this case is a really, really true comment, because your consultants will tell you one thing, your clients will tell you another, your data tells you something else as well. So I think there's lots of things that we should look at as, I don't think you've got or can really rely on having a truly mutually beneficial relationship unless you are really deep inside that client. And most recruitment agencies are not even surface level with them.
no, no, no.
So we know the market's competitive at the moment, and it's competitive for candidates and it's competitive for clients. And we know that in this type of market that, clients are getting bombarded by lots and lots of recruitment agencies. So how can a recruitment agency differentiate themselves to deepen their client loyalty and trust?
Well, a really good exercise to do as a leader is to look at other sectors, at other areas where you as an individual engage. What makes you choose, for example, one cafe or coffee house over another? Why do you prefer Costa to Starbucks or an independent one to Starbucks or whatever it is? Look for the areas in your working life and in your personal life where you differentiate against a competitor. For what reasons? And write all of those down. And you can do a really good exercise for an hour, 45 minutes with some of your staff to say, well, what makes us different? Why are we different? Is it our personal service? Is it our story and how we apply that? Is it in our pricing? Is it in our is it in the way we offer refunds? I mean, write as many down as you can and look at the ones that really stand out, are really relevant. I chair a search firm, and I think we are different to many of our search companies in how we price our service. And that is a real standing. And we have won business absolutely because of the investment we make in the final payment. And that is a differentiator, a market differentiator for us, and it's a good thing. So, what are the areas in where you're different? And in many cases, you will be the same as many of your competitors, but you're better at doing it. And being better at doing it, if you can measure it, if you've got some data, is also an area of differentiation. it's okay to be the same as everybody else if you're doing a really good job, but you're doing it better because you're getting more reward. So I think it's a really good exercise to do. It's a simple exercise to do, and you can use other examples from other industries to help differentiate yourself.
It's interesting. We did a session with a client some time ago down the sort of Northamptonshire area, and then I've done this with a number of clients, all over the UK.
Yeah.
And I think it's a first understanding your relationship with that client. And it was
Mm.
really interesting. Every time we've done that relationship exercise, it's a half a day exercise. We're not trying to sell the exercise, by the way. It's a half a day exercise. And what most clients suddenly found out was that where they thought they had a relationship, they hadn't. Where they thought they had lots of data and information, they hadn't. And therefore, it gave them a base to work from. And I always think if you sound like an agency, look like an agency, then you are an agency. And therefore, clients in the general treat you like an agency. So to differentiate yourself, you've got to really understand things that are going to differentiate yourselves. So I think once you know where your relationship stands, you need to change things up. You know, your sales to your clients, your email campaigns, the data you share with them, how you're building a bespoke service with them. But most of all, I think you need to cater to the reasons why a client would stay with you and why you would stay with them. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's not about whether you want to work with them or not. It's about whether you really have to work with them. And I think at the moment, the biggest thing a client wants at the moment, and what every client wants, are candidates. And I've been working with, I was working with, I did 7 mentoring sessions yesterday for one client for 7 managers across a multi-office business. And one thing that I asked the client straight away was, so how many candidates do you have that are compliant? They were a temp marketplace that are compliant. And how many candidates do you have out working?
Yeah.
They couldn't tell me how many clients were compliant on their database, but they could tell me how many candidates were out working. What that told me was that you might have 5,000 candidates that are compliant, but only 300 working. So it's a very small percentage. So to me, what most clients want at the moment are candidates. So if you like every other agency, when a client comes to you and wants a job, you're having to go out to the job boards, etc., etc. You haven't got a candidate that's immediately you can put in front of them. Then that says that you're the same as every other agency. But if you can say, right, here's a candidate, or better still, be taking the candidates to the marketplace, that starts to hugely differentiate yourself. So all the things that we talk about your mission statement, your service, etc., will differentiate yourself to others. But the biggest differentiation that you've got is that product and having that product when people need it. So I think we need to spend more time building unique client candidate bases that match our individual clients. And that's the differentiation. So it's getting to know your client at a deeper level, know what's coming down the line, when it's coming, so you can have it ready for them when they ask, or even before that, you're already bringing it to them.
Yeah.
And that leads to a separate sort of question. What are the key differentiators that competitor or what our competitors are pushing out to our clients? And how should you, as a recruitment leader, respond to that? Because our competitors are trying to push into our client base all the time. So how should you, as a recruitment leader, respond proactively to that?
And there are 2 schools of thought on this, Howard. There's one school of thought that says we're in command of our own destiny. We will do what we do, and I don't really care what everybody else is doing because we are X. We know our market, we do it really well. I'm not interested in what our competitors are doing. Yeah. And I've worked in that type of organization. I kind of grew up in that type of organization. I was drilled into me as a consultant. We're the very, very best. It doesn't matter what anybody else is doing. The flip side of that argument, of course, is I think as a recruitment leader, as a modern day recruitment leader, you have a responsibility to find out what your competitors are doing. Use the data that's available. What are they doing that's different to you? Not necessarily to copy them, but to find out what's going on because they may be offering a service or a value proposition to your clients, or more importantly, to your prospects who you hope to become clients. Yeah, that you're not doing or that you're not even aware of. That could be in the way they deal with them. It could be in their pricing. It could be in the services. It could be in their payments. It could be in their engagement. There's 100 different ways in which we engage with clients. So I think it really is important that we understand what our competitors are doing, keeping abreast of that, and also being aware that when our consultants get headhunting calls, which of course they do, because talent in our business is so important, and we want to keep them. Just be aware of what's going on in the market because the grass is always greener. Well, if you know that the grass on the other side is astroturf, not grass, then you can have an intelligent conversation with one of your staff is thinking of leaving because you've got a bit more market information. So I think market intelligence, competitor intelligence is really important for us to make sure that we're doing the right things. And when we've got something different, obviously we don't want to announce it too much, but I read a lot of award submissions when I'm judging, and I'm amazed at the creativity and the depth that people go to as to how they're winning clients and securing clients. And I'm thinking that's just genius, absolutely brilliant. Yeah, and I wish others would do the same or be aware of it.
I think it's a really interesting sort of point, and I think the points you make there are absolutely sort of valid. I think it's a mindset conversation,
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
and I think it's if you think they most definitely are. If you think they're not, you're mistaken. Where a lot of agencies don't think, yeah, I've got a great relationship, no one's ever going to usurp me from that relationship, but all the time there's someone chipping underway at your infrastructure, someone chipping away underneath that. So the list is really never ending, but the fact still remains: if it's happening, it means that you haven't got a relationship with your client, a deep enough relationship. So we need to stop thinking that, just because we place a candidate back in 2022, I've got a great relationship. We've got to start to think, how we create loyalty. And to do that, we've got to be really, driven by, what your client wants and is it worth working with them? And I think you need to build or work hard at building that trust for people and loyalty and build an overall relationship, not with just your buying point, but with other key people within the business. So you can start to have a different thing. So if once I feel a competitor's coming in, I always felt competitors were coming in, then to me it would be a multi approach to a client. If I'm speaking to the person that's selling the recruitment, okay, fine. Who's made that decision for that recruiter? Who's further up the line? Why aren't I speaking to those people? And then it's spreading your relationship across the line. And I think I've told this story lots and lots and lots about a part of the business that I inherited because one of the managers had left when I was at CP. They weren't in the spot business area. They weren't in my area at all. They were just purely in account management. And they said, go in, look after these four people. The managers left, we're recruiting a people. And so I went in and I said, right, okay, how have you done last year? They said, well, brilliant. We billed £4 million out of the client. I said, that's awesome. Great work. I've got one question. And they said, what's that? I said, how much did the client spend last year on IT recruitment? Oh, I've no idea. Well, there's four people in the on the PSL. Let's go find out. So 2 weeks later, I'm down again in the office. The guy's almost sort of hiding in the corner, not really wanting to have the conversation. And he came back and he said, we've got a real problem. I said, what's your problem? He said, they spent £25 million last year on IT recruitment. One of the agencies on the competitor list took 16 of that. We lost the client 6 months later. Why? Because their CEO was out with the £16 million business's CEO consistently. Our CEO at Adecco had never even spoken to the client, never even set foot in the client. So that layered selling was really important. And we lost the £4 million revenue stream, but we actually lost the opportunity for a £25 million revenue stream. And that's just because of our lack of knowledge. We thought we had a great relationship. We're on a PSL, but just because we're on a PSL for 4 years, other clients were still in there selling other services, other products, because they knew there was an opportunity in there that we didn't even think about. And I think that's the bit we got to start to think. Every client is trying, every competitor is trying to push into your client. So what are we doing to stop that? And what are we doing to deepen our relationship from there? So that leads to a further question of how can a recruitment firm create a two-way partnership with a client that goes beyond just that transactional deal?
think the first thing to say on that is, and I hope this doesn't sound too negative, Howard, is don't expect that you'll have that with everybody. That's a lovely thing to have. But you look at your client base, if you're dealing with, say, 35 clients, if you've got a really comprehensive, intelligent, tight business relationship with 33 clients, and I'm talking about names in clients, yeah, then you're doing really well. Uh, but the holy grail is to have a select number that you know that they won't even move in the workplace without asking you for advice on data, intelligence, geography, trends. You've got that trapeze where you swing together, you catch each other, and you know that you're not going to fall because you've got each other's back. If you can get that in 10 named organizations with a number of people within those organizations, then you're doing really well. Given that most recruitment companies have got less than 10 staff and are dealing with less than 15 clients. So that's the goal to aim for, but not for everybody. And it's a little bit of work that we've spoken about beforehand, the old Boston Matrix, but just looking at your clients and deciding for you yourself as a recruitment leader, which ones are the cash cows, which are the ones that do really well, which are the ones that I really don't enjoy working with, and clearly they don't enjoy working with us, and we should really ditch. Yeah, and ditch sounds quite an aggressive word, but just not cease to be trading with or cease to have them appearing on sales reports. And if you can do that exercise, and then it's that bit about right now, do I have a two-way relationship with these companies? What does that look like? If I'm reviewing one of my staff, maybe I want the client to help me with the feedback if they're involved in that. It's all those little things that make it a much stronger relationship.
So I think that when I look at this and I look at this and I'm sort of trying to sort of going back into sort of various different sort of thought processes. I think the comment that I sort of came out with is don't believe the hype. Don't believe the hype that you have the question or the relationship that you expect and want. You've got to work with that. And I think your comment there about you don't have to have that relationship with all of your clients, but I think you need to know what relationship you have. Is it a new relationship? Is it an acceptance relationship? Is it trust? Is it loyalty? Is it advocacy? And what are we trying to build? So if we know where we're trying to build with each client, I know this client is just at acceptance stage. They just accept what we're doing. It's a transactional relationship. What do I have to do next to get to trust? Now, we know that not every client's going to get down that line, but if we don't have a strategy to do that from there, and I always think that if you think about every client that you've got, within that client, there'll be a stranger, a prospect,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
a buyer, and hopefully a promoter. But once we stop working with the client, as in filling jobs with the client, and we're not interacting with them in any other way, we're not keeping in touch with them, not helping build that relationship, that buyer, after a short period of time, goes back to either being a prospect or even worse still, they're going to go back and become a stranger. So we've got to start to think about what relationship we have with our client now, what relationship do we want, and how do we build that relationship to get to where we want? And that's about putting a strategy in place. And yes, not every client will get to that. And you're right, using the Boston Matrix means that you can identify which ones that you want, which ones are a genuine dog in the Boston Matrix that you want to get rid of, but which ones are genuine cash cows, which ones are rising stars, which ones are question marks. And what we found when we've done this operation in the past, we find there's lots of clients that you're billing that they have really no clue about. And that's the question that they've got no clue about. And I was working with a client in Leeds, and it was really interesting sort of talking to them about their client base, that they had one client that had billed once every year for 3 years. But when we actually invested the client and went into company's house, it was the biggest revenue generating client of all of their client base. And they didn't understand that. They didn't know that because they just thought they had this nice relationship. And when we dug into the client and started to dig in what they were doing, their recruitment was just off the scale. but we were happy just because we were dealing with other clients. So that was a question mark client that no one knew anything about, but actually that should have been a rising star client where we should be actually looking at taking our relationship from being new and transactional to acceptance, to trust, to loyalty. And I think it's not knowing those steps is really sort of things that hold recruitment agencies back. They don't know how to build that relationship. And they keep, as I say, they believe the hype that once someone's bought from them, that they're their best friend and their best friend forever, when actually they're
Yeah.
not. And that's the thing that we've got to think. So let's sort of move this sort of conversation a little bit. Let's move the conversation into what innovative strategies are top performing recruitment agencies using to maintain long-term relationships and ensure consistent growth.
Well, I'll pick up on four things that I picked up from some of the award submissions that I've had the privilege of reading in the last 12 months or so. So whether you agree with the announcements or the who's won what awards, these are awards for the best of the best in our recruitment sector, independent. And some of the things I've seen. So instead of placing just one or two people, offering the client the opportunity to place teams of people. So building a model where it places teams, where they place teams of people, because most clients will want one or two, of course they will, but some of them will want more. Yeah. So you can actually say, well, we can place teams of people. Often the clients are going to the consulting firms for teams of people because that's what consulting firms do. And we all know that consulting firms then come to agencies. So it's actually, instead of meeting consulting firms on the way down because they're stepping into our territory, we go up and say that we can do that. And there's ways of doing that that we can talk about outside of this. Number two is pricing over time. So not actually offering a price. Here's a permanent candidate. It's 22%. You pay us on the day they start. Yeah? Doing the pricing over a little bit longer. Yes, it affects your cash flow, but it may buy you loyalty. And I've seen some very interesting pricing over time strategies that some people have done. The third one is putting staff on site. Can we help you with your equipment? You may not be big enough, you may not have a TA, but can we actually help put something on site or somebody on site? I'm not talking about full-blown MSP or RPO because some of those things are just too big for the client that is hiring. But it could be that you loan them one of your staff for 2 weeks while they go through that while they go through that program. Yeah, they can still do your work on the client side, but for some of the time, they're based on the client side doing that work. And the last one is becoming more advisory. We are the brokers of talent. We are inundated with information and market intelligence and business data, both for our own CRM, from LinkedIn, from REC or Talent or Team or whatever organizations we're associated with. We're bombarded with that information. Putting that into an intelligent document or having an intelligent conversation and becoming advisory. Yeah, offering advice, whether that advice is offered for free in a consultant sort of way, or whether it's offered at cost. But I think some of the companies that I've seen, and we're talking about companies in some cases with less than 6 staff. Yeah. And the final one, there is a fifth one, is joining organizations which your clients join. So if your client is a digital marketing company, yeah, or you serves the digital marketing, are you part of that where the clients play? Are you playing? Are you entering awards? Are you being part of panels? Are you giving back to some of the schools work that they do? What charities do they support? Can you support them? Go back to that two-way relationship and all of those things that you can do to make you appear more secure, more at one with the client. I think it can really help. And I've seen how organizations have done that and transformed their business.
It's interesting. I read an article right at the start of lockdown, and it was
Yeah.
an article on, it was based on recruitment, and it said, what are clients looking for as we come out of lockdown? And the things that they were looking for in order of preference was they wanted to reduce their overall cost of recruitment. That didn't say reduce the cost of fees, it said reduce their overall cost of recruitment. They wanted to create a better candidate engagement process to get the candidates through the process.
Yeah.
They wanted to create a data sharing commodity that would enable them to make better informed decisions. And we think about this when we were at LinkedIn, working with LinkedIn, they were talking about what clients really want from recruitment agencies, and it was to help workforce mobilization. And so what they're talking about, the same thing, is better informed decisions about recruiting planned positions that they have orchestrated into their business based on what's going on in the next 12 months. And the final thing that they said as the top four things, the last thing was they wanted to be able to get into the candidate marketplace from a branding point of view. And so you think about the things that you're talking about and what we're looking at there. If you are close enough to your client, if you've got a really good relationship with your client, you know, the question is how often do they do planning meetings about projects, about bringing new staff, about winning opportunities, etc., which means that they're going to have to change their workforce mobilization. And then what can we do to get the right people into those businesses? So that means, can we help the client with their EVP? Can we help their client with their attraction policies on their website? Can we help their client when we are out there talking to the marketplace about what's going on? So all of these things start to sort of come into it. And then that's about helping them with their mainstream attraction. So can we help them then with their interview process, their onboarding process? Can we help educate them that this is what's happening with the candidate marketplace and what's working? And I think it's those sort of things that the top performing agencies are doing really, really well, because they're leveraging their data. They understand that a relationship, a deep relationship, is far more prosperous than a new business relationship. And losing that client is huge compared to bringing on new clients, but they realize they've got to do the two. But they have a very keen strategy on keeping their clients. So they're not just thinking about, oh, they're always billed with me for the last 5 years, they're going to carry on billing with me. They're always doing something to, escalate their worth and their stickiness within that client. So I think from an initiative point of view, we've got to start. I think the top performing recruitment agencies are trying to, in your conversation there, Dave, they're trying to embed themselves in the client, whether that's physically or whether that's metaphorically. They are embedding themselves in the client and making themselves absolutely necessary rather than the evil necessity that clients call us from there.
Yeah.
So last question. It's always an interesting question, and I'm always interested in your comments on this, Dave. We spent 2 days at the expo, and we walked around the expo and sort of saw lots of things happening at the expo, etc., etc. One of the big things that we've said that the expo sort of become, it's a recruitment expo, but it's more of a tech show at the moment, and there's lots and lots of tech in there. There's some innovative tech. There's some tech that you're thinking, okay, that may work, that may not work, etc. So, what role does technology play in managing and nurturing a client relationship in today's landscape, and where should leaders invest?
So the where should leaders invest question is a whole webinar, and it almost is a how long is a piece of string. But the answer to the question for me is, if you're sitting with a tech player who's trying to sell you a piece of technology that will transform your business, the question I would ask that person is, how much time does it save if I buy your piece of software, if I buy your piece of kit, if I buy your product, your app? How much time does it save me? Help me to quantify that. Because what I would want to know if I was working alongside you as a recruitment leader is, what are you going to do with that time? Is that you will have better client relationships or better candidate relationships or better employee relationships? Because if you map out the recruitment process into, say, 15 different bits from requirement gathering to cash, there's a piece of tech that can support you all the way. At the recruitment show, I think there were about 50 tech companies. It is most definitely for me the recruitment tech show rather than the recruitment show. And I say that in a positive way. There's lots of positive recruitment tech companies out there trying to offer their services which will help you build your business. But if you break it down into 15, say, different areas, what piece of tech can help save you money or buy you time? And what is it that you want? And then you can narrow that down to either maybe not buy as much or buy whatever you're going to buy in a more intelligent way. And of course, the key thing, and Tim, who is our tech advisor as a partner of Jump, Tim Staff, Tim would say, you've also got to work out whether they all join together or you end up with just lots of little bits of kit that over time you've bought, but there's no API. They don't connect. This doesn't do this and this doesn't do that. And then you want to change the CRM, but that isn't supported by that. So it's a little bit of a minefield. And if you like shiny new things, and as recruitment leaders, most of us like shiny new things, particularly when it comes to tech. There's that bigger picture of, well, which bit of the process does this fit into, and what does it give me? Does it give me more money, or does it give me more time, or is it a combination of both? And what am I going to do with it? Because recruitment, as we grow with the role of AI, the way the workforce is changing, relationships are going to be the key thing. People who can have intelligent conversations and build relationships with clients, that's going to matter the most. So, what is it that you need to buy, if anything, that helps you to do that?
So that's a really sort of interesting segue to my thought process on that. Because my thought process is before you buy anything,
Yeah.
test the tech that you already have.
Yeah. Good share.
And if you haven't, if you're not utilizing all your tech, then you've got a problem. I'm speaking to a number of recruitment agents at the moment. They're looking to change their tech and what have you. And the first thing I'm saying is go back to your tech provider, find out what that tech can do, find out whether you're utilizing that tech. Will it work? Does it save you time? Does it create more time for you from there? If it does, implement it. If it doesn't, then we've got to do something about it. But then you've got to start to think, and this is the bit that we really start to think about is what makes you money? The clients don't make you money, clients just pay you bills. So what makes you money are your candidates. So if I looked at my candidate database and I suddenly realized that there are 5,000 candidates on my database, and I'm just going to use, a flippant figure. Average placement fee in the UK is £4,000, I think, or something like that. Okay, so that means my database is worth £20 million. If I just wanted to place 1% of that database, okay, that's £200,000. Now, whether that's a single solo business or whether that's a business that says, I've got 5 staff, I just want them all to place 1% of my database, all of a sudden that's £200,000 per head per business.
Yeah.
Okay. But the question is, which of those candidates on your database are looking for a job? Which candidates on those databases are starting to look for a job? Which candidates on those databases would engage with you if you brought the right job to them? Now, we don't really know that because we don't really harvest our data of our candidates that well. We sometimes put down availability, but the rest of it is there. So if we put a piece of tech that could start to bring those candidates to us quicker and faster, ensure those candidates' data is refreshed and up to date, that means when a client calls us, we should have candidates to hand almost immediately that we can place into that client. And I think that's where technology will really start to help us. It will bring the product to us that we need quicker, faster. If you've got 5,000 candidates on your database and you don't know the 20% that are currently looking for a job, then you're having to find every 5,000 to go through all 5,000 candidates rather than just going through that 20%. And that saves a huge amount of time and it utilizes the products that you've already paid for and already got and already engaging with. So I think if I was investing in tech, I'd be investing in tech that can interrogate my candidate database, sectionalize my candidate database, so I can then start to use that candidate database and know when and who to take to my clients before my clients want that. And I think that's where tech will start to work. AI will start to work out. If you could start to think about the average tenure of a consultant at a business, let's say, I don't know, let's just say a civil engineer, the average tenure might be 2.5 years. But when does that person think about the job? They think about leaving the job probably a year to 18 months before they actually leave. When do we start to engage with them? In the last 3 months when they put their CV on the job boards, or they're responding to our adverts. So they're already leaving and they're already engaging with other agencies. So if I could get that candidate prior to that, sign that candidate exclusively, and then harvest that candidate and farm it to my client base, perhaps I can make more money out of that candidate and not be in such a bun fight. So to me, tech is about leveraging your potential in your database as well as creating time.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely.
There we go. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you much for your time. Much appreciated. Dave, thanks for all your comments. Much appreciated. Next week, we are off because it's half term, and most people are on half term next week. And then the week after, we've got a man called Cy Ball coming in.
Who's great man.
He's going to talk about process, mapping your process to your tech and your recruitment side to ensure that you create time and expedite the process. So things that we've been talking about today about creating time, and that will enable you to leverage more time. Really interesting topic. He's a really interesting conversation. Find him on there LinkedIn. It's Cyborg, SAEEDBOR. He's a great guy. He's got some really interesting knowledge on tech and how it works. So I think it'll be a very interesting conversation in 2 weeks' time. Dave, have a super week. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for your time and see you all next week.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great week. Cheers.
Bye.